When we last left off, the most powerful era thus far had come to an end. In the wake of the last mini-box of the Zexal Era, Karakuri had risen rapidly to become one of the best decks of the format, with Witchcrafter contesting it to prevent a full meta takeover. We now continue our look back over the history of Konami's venture into the mobile market with Yu-Gi-Oh!, its ups and downs, and its intricate and ever-evolving metagame. This is the history of Duel Links. The Zexal Era of Duel Links began on September 29, 2020 with the simultaneous releases of Zexal World, Structure Deck Gagaga Exceed, the main box Shining Hope, and a series of gameplay updates to change how certain aspects of Duel Links would work moving forward. The update included 3 major items: adding additional extra deck slot, moving the total spaces from 6 to 7, an update to how effect damage would work moving forward, and the introduction of Exceed summoning. From now on, any card with effect damage added to Duel Links would have its damage halved, as to not create an issue with further burn effects creating FTK scenarios. This would not affect cards already present in the game, with the exception of Lava Golem, who would have its effect damage cut in half from 1000 to 500 moving forward. Exceed summoning was the new mechanic on display with this era, which involved summoning a monster from the extra deck by overlaying 2 or more monsters with the same level to create a new monster, being far easier to access than Synchros in most cases, as you didn't have to add any new specific cards to the main deck to use them. This new mechanic would be the focal point of Zexal World. Zexal World would launch with 3 available characters, similar to Zexal World the previous year, those being Yuma and Astral, Tori Meadows, and Bronxstone. Yuma and Astral were focused around the archetype of Onomat, which encompasses the sub-archetypes of Gagaga, Go-Go-Go, Do-Do-Do, and Zubaba. This was fully apparent through their signature skill, Onomata Play, which would, once per duel, let you swap any 2 Onomat cards in your hand for any 2 Onomat monsters in your deck with a different name. As for cards, the only notable one in their unlocks would be Tempo the Percussion Shin, a rank 3 that could detach a material to detach a material from any other Exceed in play, seeing occasional play in decks with level 3s, such as Triamid, though not because it was particularly good, but because there was no reason not to. Tori Meadows was focused around various fairy monsters and support, highlighted by her boss monster Fairy Cheer Girl, a rank 4 Exceed requiring 2 fairy monsters who could detach one material to draw a card once per turn. This effect, while powerful, would almost never see use due to the requirement of fairy monsters specifically, meaning it was very limited in its applications. The only other card worth noting here was Satellar Knight Skybridge, a spell that supported an archetype released in the main box the same day. Lastly, Bronxstone was focused on various machine cards based on toys, but more specifically the Wind-Up archetype, a series of monsters that could only use their effects once while on the field, pushing advantage to Exceed summon. This was primarily present in the card Wind-Up Rat, which could switch itself to defense mode to revive any Wind-Up monster once while on field. Tori and Bronk would see little to no play on release, although Yuma and Astral would see some experimentation immediately thanks to the structure deck released the same day. Structure Deck Gagaga Exceed was the 11th standard structure deck of Duel Links, released on the same day as Zexal World on September 29, 2020. This deck would include a couple powerful Gagaga monsters to help the blooming Onomat archetype, being Gagaga Mancer, who could special summon a Gagaga from grave once per turn, locking you into Gagaga monsters that turn, and who boosted an Exceed by 500 attack that turn when detached as a material, Zubaba Bancho Gagaga Coat, who could special summon itself from hand if you controlled a Zubaba or Gagaga monster other than itself and was able to revive a Go-Go-Go or Do-Do-Do monster from grave once per turn, locking you into Exceeds from the extra deck that turn, and their Exceed monster Gagaga Cowboy, a rank 4 that could detach a material to either boost itself by 1000 and reduce the opponent's monster by 500 in battle that turn, or to deal 400 effect damage. While Cowboy was a bit lacking out the gate, seeing use as a tech choice at most, Coat and Mancer would see experimentation in the blooming Onomat archetype. These cards would be further complemented by the main box released the same day. Shining Hope was the first main box of the Zexal Era, released on the same day as Zexal World on September 29, 2020. This box would be the first big introduction of generic Exceeds monsters to the game, as well as the introduction of Exceeds-focused archetypes. Onomat would be the highlight archetype here, pushing Yuma and Astral as the go-to characters for the new world. This wave included Utopic Onomatopoeia, which was considered all 4 of the Onomat sub-archetypes, and could special summon one of each from hand once per turn, locking you into Exceeds that turn. Gagaga Sister, who could search a Gagaga spell or trap on normal summon, and could make herself and another Gagaga's level equal to their combined levels once per turn. Dododo Buster, who could special summon himself as a level 4 if your opponent has a monster and you don't. Gagaga Samurai, a rank 4 who could detach a material to let a Gagaga monster attack twice that turn. Gagaga Bolt, which destroys a card on field if you control a Gagaga monster. And Gagaga Wind, which special summons a Gagaga from hand as a level 4 monster. With this showing, Automat would see immediate experimentation, but very little success out the gate, as while their Exceed making and consistency thanks to their skill was unmatched, the Exceed pool was too lacking for them to be meta-relevant. The other major Exceed archetype here was Tellarknight, a series of light warriors focused on swarming the field and generating advantage through their on-summon effects, hitting payoffs with their rank 4 Exceeds. This wave included Tellarknight Deneb, who searched a Tellarknight on summon, Altair, who summoned a Tellarknight from grave on summon, Unukalai, who sent a Tellarknight from deck to grave on summon, Vega, who summoned a Tellarknight from hand on summon, Sirius, who shuffled 5 Tellarknight monsters from grave into deck on summon, then drew one, their boss monster Tellarknight Deltros, a 3-material rank 4 who made your summons unrespondable and could detach one to destroy a card on field once per turn, special summoning a Tellarknight from hand or deck when sent to grave, and the trap Stellar Nova Alpha, an Omni-Negate counter trap that sends a Tellarknight from field to grave for cost and draws one on a successful negate. Tellarknights had an explosive introduction here, but just couldn't break into the overall meta thanks to the lackluster Exceeds pool and the power of meta threats like Karakuri and Witchcrafter holding them back. Other notable cards from the set include Caius the Shadow Monarch, who could banish a card on Tribute Summon, dealing 500 to the opponent if the banished card was a Dark monster, Goblinberg, who could special summon a level 4 from hand and swap to defense mode on normal summon, DD Crow, who could be discarded from hand to banish a card from the opponent's graveyard, number 39 Utopia, the ace monster of Yuma and Astral, number 25 Force Focus, a rank 6 Exceed that can negate the effects of a face-up level 5 or higher monster on field once per turn, Bujentai, Susanoo, and Tsukiyomi, the boss monsters of the Bujin strategy, Exceed Block, a counter trap for monster effects that attaches an Exceed material from one of your Exceeds monsters for cost, and the release of the Selection Box exclusives Fiendish Chain, Phosphorage the Elemental Lord, and Aaron Lightsworn Monk. Overall, Shining Hope was a decent introduction for Exceeds as a mechanic, but lacked the power necessary to dethrone the top decks of the time. Because of this, Konami would also opt for a balance update to help ring in the new era 2 weeks later. The October 2020 balance changes went into effect on October 14, 2020, being a monumental set of changes as it marked the first time cards were ever banned in Duel Links. Starting with skills, Restart now required at least 7 of each spells and traps to be used, targeted at Karakuri abusing the skill to open their combos. Switcheroo's cost was increased from 1000 to 1500 and was made to be once per duel, effectively killing its usage alongside Volcanic Shell for easy draws. Bandit now requires sending a card from hand to deck to use, adding a stricter cost to the skill. Shadow Game now dealt a maximum of 400 damage in addition to not damaging any player under 1000, targeted at decks like Ritual Beast using the skill to single-handedly win games. Both Access Denied and Ojama Overflow would have their skills limited to use from turn 5 onward, blocking lockout usage early on in games, but also due to their interactions with Star Blast, which would let you drop your life points as low as you needed to use these skills. Show of Nightmares now required the user to return a spell from hand to deck after usage, targeted at Witchcrafter using the skill for free advantage. Moth to the Flame now let you add a transformation target to hand if you controlled a Petite Moth with Cocoon equipped. Afterlife Lockdown was buffed to twice per duel from once per duel. And finally, Red Eyes Fusion can now return a Red Eyes Black Dragon from grave to deck as the cost. Moving into cards, the first ever cards banned in Duel Links were Cyberstein and That Grass Looks Greener. Cyberstein cheese decks were still prevalent on the latter, as no matter how many times they were nerfed, they kept popping back up, resulting in the banning of the enabling card. For That Grass Looks Greener, it had essentially become a 1 in 30 cards win button against any deck not running 30 cards. A ban here would remove the most high variance card from the game, leaving decks needing heavy milling to operate to find new ways to fuel their plays, such as Needlebug Nest and Charge of the Light Brigade. Moving to limited, Star Blast was limited as it was being used to both cheese out high level monsters and pay the life points necessary to use certain skills. Needlebug Nest was limited to reduce the prevalence of 30 card decks with the banning of grass. Revival Gift was limited as it was being used to lock up boards, particularly against decks using Exceed summoning. Gold Sarcophagus and Charge of the Light Brigade would be moved to semi-limited, while Thunder Dragon Dark would be removed from the list, still limiting the 1-card starters of Thunder Dragons while allowing them to access their primary searcher. Nanishi would be semi-limited in an attempt to push Karakuri players off of using Heitrunade to enable OTKs. Keeper of Dragon Magic would be semi-limited to prevent usage alongside Neos Fusion, effectively removing it from the deck. Blackbird Close would be semi-limited, marking the third Blackwing card in the semi-limited section. Witchcrafter Holiday would be semi-limited to match the change made to Charter the Light Brigade, further nerfing Witchcrafters. For tri-limits, Alistair the Invoker would be tri-limited to cut Element Sabers off the Invoke package, as Palace of the Elemental Lords was also tri-limited, while also removing Element Saber Malo from the list as this hit discouraged the use of Invoked in general. Overall, this list would be monumental with the first ever banning of cards, as many now look to the first mini-box of the era to shake things up. Voltage of Metal was the first mini-box of the Zexal Era, released on October 22, 2020. This box's primary goal was to provide further support to Exceed-centric machine archetypes, starting with Windups. Windups received a major wave of support here, carving the archetype into an actual Exceeds deck. This wave included Shark, who could special summon itself from hand when you summon a Windup, then could either increase or decrease its level once per turn, Magician, who can special summon a Windup from deck when another Windup uses its effect once while on field, Rabbit, who could banish a Windup monster until your next standby phase once while on field, resetting their effects, Zenmaines, a rank 3 who could detach a material to prevent destruction, then could destroy a card on field in the end phase if this effect was used, Zenmayo, a rank 5 who can detach one to pop 2 set cards once per turn, Zenmaity, a rank 3 who could detach one to special summon a Windup from hand or deck, and could detach one when a Windup is destroyed to return it to hand, and Factory, which searches a Windup once per turn when a Windup effect is used. While the deck had some fun plays with this support, Windup had no real win condition, leaving it to struggle against the other top decks of the format and almost instantly forgotten. Although Windup Rabbit in particular would see experimentation in a variation of Chain Beat alongside board disruption traps like Needle Sealing and Drowning Mirror Force. The other machine archetype here was Geargia, gaining further support to attempt to push into the Exceed era. This wave included Geargia Armor, who searched to Geargia when flipped face up, Gear Gigandex, a rank 4 requiring machines that could detach one to search a level 4 or lower machine, special summoning a level 3 Geargia from grave on destruction, Geargia Gear Gigandex G, a 3 material rank 3 that, when a machine battled, could detach a material to negate all the opponent's monster's effect on field and prevented the opponent from activating effects until the end of the damage step, returning a Geargia from grave to hand on destruction, and Geargia Gear, a trap that special summoned 2 Geargiano monsters from deck, increasing their levels by 1. The support wouldn't do nearly enough to bring Geargia into the meta, seeing no success and immediately being forgotten, just like Windups, although Gear Gigant X would see usage in other machine decks that could make it. Other noteworthy cards from the set include Leviair the Sea Dragon, a rank 3 that could detach one to summon a banished level 4 or lower monster, Diamond Direwolf, a rank 4 that could detach one to pop a Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast you controlled and a card the opponent controlled, which included itself. Number 50, Black Ship of Corn, a rank 4 that could detach one to send a monster with less attack to the grave. Number 18, Heraldry Patriarch, a rank 4 that could detach one when there are more than one monster with the same name on field to send all but one of them to the grave, locking further summoning of any monster with the same name, and the release of the Selection Box exclusive Fairy Tale Rella. Overall, Voltage of Metal would bring multiple generic Exceeds to add to the pool, but no new meta decks to challenge the top threats of the meta. Any hope for a meta shakeup would have to wait for the next character unlock event a week later. Beginning on October 28, 2020, Shark Attack brought Reginald Shark Castle to the game. Shark's focus would be placed on water attribute Exceeds, specifically those made with fish-type shark monsters. The primary payoffs included here for this were the rank 3's number 47 Nightmare Shark, who could detach one to let a water monster attack directly that turn, but it is the only monster able to attack, and number 17 Leviathan Dragon, who could detach one once per turn to increase its attack by 500, but cannot attack directly while it has no materials. Much more importantly than these two though, he brought the skill Territory of the Sharks, which could, once per turn and twice per duel, change the level of all water monsters on your field to 4 until the end of the turn, on the condition that the only monsters in your deck and extra deck are water monsters. This skill, though lacking in extra deck targets for the time being, did show serious promise, as the previously released Deep Sea Diva could summon out an Atlantean monster with her effect, then both turn into level 4s for an Exceed summon, which could trigger the Atlantean's effect when detached as material. Overall, Shark's event, while showing serious potential, currently had no applications with the lack of rank 4 waters to enable the deck theorized. This would quickly change with the next main box released 2 weeks later. Fang was the second main box for the Zexal Era, released on November 8, 2020. This box would primarily be focused on following up the previous Shark event with various enablers and payoffs to the Water Exceed strategy. Some of these cards include Mermaid Shark, who adds a level 3, 4, or 5 fish from deck to hand on normal summon, Silent Angler, who can special summon itself from hand if you control a water monster, Exceed Slide Dolphin, who can special summon itself from hand when you summon an Exceed monster, or attach itself from grave to it as material when the Exceed is summoned, and the Exceed monster number 32 Shark Drake, a 3 material rank 4 that can, upon destroying a monster in battle, detach one to special summon it back with 1,000 less attack and attack it again, and number 37 Hope Woven Spider Shark, a rank 4 requiring monsters who can, when a monster attacks, detach a material to drop all opponent's monsters by 1,000 attack for that turn, and can special summon any monster from grave on destruction. These pieces of support made Water Exceed possible to play, but still lacking a monster that could use its effect on command on the opponent's turn, making the deck flounder in the meta, though it did find some rogue success with this support. Evil Swarm would receive a wave of Exceed-centric support here with Castor, who let you normal summon an additional Elswarm monster the turn he's normal summoned, Karakion, who could banish an Elswarm from grave to add an Elswarm from grave to hand, then provided an additional normal summon, and Bahamut, a rank 4 requiring Elswarm monsters that could detach one and discard an Elswarm monster to take control of an opponent's monster. While this support was interesting, Evil Swarm would do absolutely nothing in this meta, being forgotten immediately. Other noteworthy cards from the set include Maestroke the Symphony Djinn, a rank 4 who could detach a material to flip a monster face down or to prevent his destruction, Adrius, Keeper of Armageddon, a rank 5 who could detach a material to destroy an opponent's face-up card, Gishki support and Abyss, who could search a Gishki with 1,000 defense or less on summon, and Vision, who could be discarded to search for a Gishki ritual monster or be tributed as the full ritual cost, Soul of Silver Mountain, a rank 3 requiring earth monsters that could detach one to lock a set spell or trap from activating, and special summon an earth monster from grave when it destroyed a monster in battle while it still had materials, number 45 Crumbo Logos the Prophecy of Demolition, a rank 2 who could detach one to negate the effects of a face-up card on field, and negate all cards with the same name while on field, Dododo Draw, which could discard a Dododo monster to draw 2, and the release of the Selection Box exclusives Elemental Hero Stratos, Vision Hero Adoration, and Black Illusion. Overall, Fang would make a solid push to shift the meta towards the usage of Exceed-centric decks, but the effect wouldn't be felt until later in the era, as the DSOD decks were still unquestionably the best decks in the format, further emphasized by the KC Cup beginning 2 days later. The first KC Cup of the Zexal era ran from November 10th through the 23rd of 2020. Decks that had 1 or 2 top spots, but not a major showing, included Dragoonity, Lunalight, Thunder Dragon, Weather Painter, Blackwing, Pure Invoked, Invoked Roids, Lightsworn, Stall, Triamid, Witchcrafter, Yosenju, and Onomat. Onomat here would be the only deck in the entire top 100 originating from the Zexal era, and even then with only a single top spot, showing the overwhelming oppressive power of the DSOD mainstays, especially with the remaining 11 decks that took majority of the top cut. Tied for 9th with 3 unique players in the top 100 were Hero, Goki, and Megalith. Hero was starting to solidify its game plan with most builds using 2 copies of Vion with no Trunade in addition to the skill Bring It to quickly search out Destiny Hero Plasma in tougher matchups where monster effects were an issue. Goki had solidified its monster lineup to 3 Suprex, 2 Rescorpio, and 3 Twist Cobra across all top lists, though its lineup of specific traps and other tools was heavily varied between lists. Megalith had streamlined their list to an exact 20 between all 3 players with the exception of an added Lancia in one list, all opting to use Master of Rites 2 to prevent their ritual monsters from being targeted or destroyed by monster effects. Tied for 7th with 4 unique players in the top 100 were Ritual Beast and Dark Magician. Dark Magician was still prevalent in its game plan thanks to the power of Dark Magical Circle and Magician navigation when used together, further boosted by Rod's ability to search whatever was missing. Ritual Beast had centralized its core monster lineup across most top builds, but was still up in the air as to which skill was best for the deck to use, being between Destiny Draw and Sealed Tombs, slightly favoring the latter here due to the meta decks of the tournament. Tied for 4th with 5 unique players in the top 100 were Cyber Dragon, Desperado, and Magician Girl Invoked. Cyber Dragons at this point was just going through the motions. Quickly churn out games faster than any other deck on the ladder and make progress by winning more than you lost. Nothing had really changed about the deck in some time, yet it still performed. Desperado was a face, however, that we had not seen in some time. With the addition of the tech cards Misjudge and Head Judging, Desperado was once again able to break the threshold needed to play Master of Destiny, giving them 3 guaranteed heads at the start of the duel to use to gain momentum with power plays like Cup of Ace. In addition, the introduction of Gear Gigant X, though not the main driving factor, did give the deck a searcher for powerful normal summons like Twin Barrel Dragon, Black Salvo, and Machina Gearframe. Also, the card Fiend Comedian was an excellent counter in this meta, as every deck in the top 3 had some way of making plays with their graveyard, whether as extension or as their primary strategy. Magician Girl Invoked was the newest popular Invoke deck to play after the gutting of Element Saber and Neo-Sensions, providing various attributes through the usage of Magician Girls for plays with Alistair, notably giving them access to Magellanica, Purgatrio, and Cositas. In addition, the deck was able to take advantage of the new Exceed monsters thanks to Diamond Direwolf being able to pop a problematic card using Alistair as material before fusing, providing an Earthen Grave for fusing too. Tied for second, with 8 unique players in the top 100, were Karakuri and Shiranui. While the nerfs to Restart had made it more difficult to use the decks for OTKs, Karakuri was still insanely powerful both going first and second, having a full combo off any 2 of their monsters, or 1 in the case of Inasichi. Most players were still opting to use the nerf to Restart, but some opted to use Draw Sense low level to use a Cosmic Cyclone to draw either Nanishi or Inashichi, which in turn would give the player an easy combo to use. Shiranui saw the most drastic change out of any of these decks in the tournament, seeing a split in the direction of the deck once again with the banning of Grass. While half of the builds here were still playing Control Shiranui, a new, far more explosive variant was making a name for itself here with Combo Shiranui. This variant made use of cards like Shiranui Samurai and Sealing Ceremony of Catan to banish copies of Spirit Master on a quick effect to pop face-up cards the opponent controlled, clearing the board rapidly to end the game. This was also further enabled by Ghost Meets Girl, which could both set up the grave and put a Shiranui on board to enable these combos. In first place, with 15 unique players in the top 100, was Crystron's, showing the true resilience of the deck. Through various starters like Gen X Undyne and Scrap Recycler, the deck was still able to quickly and effectively fill the grave with Crystron monsters to begin their combo lines. With the nerf to the previously dominant Karakuri deck, Crystron was more easily able to control matches against the explosive powerhouse, leading to its strong performance. Overall, this KC Cup was almost entirely dominated by decks from the DSOD era, showing the weak start to the Zexal era and, more clearly, how powerful those previous decks were, preventing the rise of anything new into the meta as long as they held dominance. This would be addressed within the next month between the releases of new cards, characters, and a balance update, starting with the new Structure Deck EX a week later. Tales of the Noble Knights was the 11th Structure Deck EX, released on November 30th, 2020. The Structure Deck's primary goal was to bring Noble Knights back into the meta as a contender with its Exceed era support, starting with Merlin. While Merlin is not a Noble Knight in name, he quickly became a critical part of the deck, as he could tribute himself to special summon a Noble Knight from deck, then banish himself from grave to either Synchro or Exceed summon a Noble Knight on a quick effect. The primary use of this was to summon out Madrat, who could, with any Noble Arm spell equipped, summon out Bors, equip the spell to him, and set up the hand and grave with both Gwynnefer and their new trap until Noble Arms are needed once more, which let you add a card from the top of your deck to your hand when activated on field, and, more importantly, could be banished from grave to summon a Noble Knight from deck with a different name than those on field and grave. This combo would leave both Bors and Madrat at level 5 by their effects, leading into the new boss monster of the archetype, Sacred Noble Knight of King Artorigus, a rank 5 that must be made with Noble Knights that equips up to 3 Noble Arms from grave onto himself on summon, and could detach a material to pop a monster on field, also floating into a Noble Knight in grave on destruction. The deck also came with his rank 4 counterpart, Artorigus, King of the Noble Knights, who was a rank 4 with the same equip effect and could detach one to destroy spell and traps on the field up to the number of Noble Arms on field. In addition to all of these tools, the deck also came with reprints of Madrat and Dristan to prevent digging through old boxes for relevant high rarity cards. While Noble Knights were not immediately top tier off of this, as the DSOD decks were still dominant, a powerful combo line was realized fast off of this. Any line that opened a way into Madrot plus a Noble Arm spell could end with a 5-Aegis with 4000 attack and a monster pop that could also clear face-down cards with Noble Arm spells, meaning the deck had a consistent OTK line with the skill Balance, guaranteeing a Noble Arm spell in the opening. While this would not be prevalent immediately due to a heavy back row meta of the time, the deck would still see experimentation as the consistency of Madrot and Boars together could set up all kinds of plays on their own, mainly through Boars dumping up to 2 until Noble Arms are needed and 1 Gwen to set up plays going into the opponent's turn. Overall, Tales of the Noble Knights would definitely provide a powerful strategy to work with in addition to cheap competitive decks for players who were interested, leading into the next new character unlock event 3 days later. Beginning on December 3rd, 2020, D&D Castle Assault would bring Axel Brody to Duel Links. Axel Brody was known for a series of volcanic monsters in the GX anime, which had been in the game since the GX era with Primal Burst, but Axel did bring a few new toys to play with. The first of these was the Duel Links exclusive card Volcanic Wall, a continuous spell that could mill your deck by 3 once per turn at the cost of attacking that turn. This card would instantly find its way into various decks that wanted milling, seeing play alongside the Raiden Charge engine in many builds, but would be seen as a tech choice rather than absolute staple due to it only being available at 1 copy through level up rewards. The other big tool he received was the skill Fire Reload, which could, when your hand is only Pyro-type monsters, shuffles your entire hand into the deck to draw that many cards once per duel. While it was clearly intended to be used with volcanic decks, the deck that ended up benefiting from it the most was actually Invoked Neos, which used the skill as a perfect replacement to the now nerfed Switcheroo to gain draw power off engine pieces of Volcanic Shell, adding them to hand and immediately shuffling them away for the draw power. This innovation, alongside the usage of Spiritual Beast Tamer Winda as a stalling infusion engine, and providing a level 4 to use with Alistair for Exceed summons, would bring Invoked Neos back into the meta solidly for a period of time. Overall, Axel's event brought a couple of new tools that sparked innovation in multiple decks, leading into the next mini-box a week later. Rage of Volcano was the second mini-box of the Zexal Era, released on December 9th, 2020. The set was focused on giving multiple fire attribute archetypes major pushes into the meta, starting with Battle in Boxers. Battle in Boxers was an archetype of fire warriors focused on swarming the field to summon out their rank 4 Exceed boss monsters. This wave included Headgeared, who sent the Battle in Boxer from deck to grave on normal summon and prevented his own battle destruction, Veil, who could special summon itself from hand when you took battle damage, recovering the amount taken, number 79 Battle in Boxer Nova Kaiser, who could attach a Battle in Boxer from grave to itself as material once per turn, gained 100 attack for each material on it, and summoned a Battle in Boxer from grave up to the number of materials it had on destruction, and Spirits, which milled you by 1 to summon a Battle in Boxer from grave. This wave was clearly nowhere near enough to make Battle in Boxers as an archetype do anything, but Veil was singled out from this wave as a very powerful tool in Duel Links specifically. While it didn't do much in the TCG, being just a direct attack preventer outclassed by many others like it, in Duel Links it was considered extremely useful because you still took the damage of the attack before recovering it, meaning skills like Destiny Draw could be very easily triggered at high life point counts with this card because you still took the damage, seeing immediate play alongside Alistair in particular by allowing the player to search Alistair from the damage either with Destiny Draw or Sorcery Conduit, then being able to overlay with the Alistair for a card like Diamond Direwolf to clear a problem card and make Purgatrio from the grave. The other archetype to receive support here was the old GX era staple of Hazy Flames, receiving Griffin, who could special summon itself from hand if your opponent controlled a monster and you didn't, or if all monsters you controlled were fire, Hydra, who gave an Exceed made with it an additional Hazy Flame from grave as material, Basiltrice, their boss monster Exceed that took 2 or more level 6 fire monsters, could detach 1 to banish a monster from the opponent's field or grave, and gained effects based on how many monsters were attached to it as material, gaining 200 attack and defense for each at 3 or more, targeting protection at 4 or more, and effect destruction immunity at 5, and Hazy Pillar, which let you normal summon Hazy Flame monsters without tributing, and attach a material to Basiltrice from hand or field once per turn. This support would do nothing to change Hazy Flame's position in the meta, as their primary boss of Basiltrice could only start with a maximum of 3 Exceeds material when summoned due to the field restrictions of Duel Links, making its primary gimmick not even that powerful to begin with. Other noteworthy cards from the set include Coach Soldier Wolfbark, who could special summon a level 4 Fire Beast Warrior from grave once per turn, negating its effect on field, Number 61 Volcasaurus, a rank 5 that can detach one to destroy a face-up monster the opponent controlled, burning them for half its attack but being unable to attack directly that turn. Tyrus, Keeper of Genesis, a rank 5 that can't be destroyed by card effects while it has material, and destroys a card on field after it attacks or is attacked while it has materials, but must attach a material at the end of the player's end phases. Vylon to Sigma, a 3-material rank 3 that can detach a material to steal an attack position monster the opponent controls and equip it to it as an equip spell once per turn, allowing it to destroy any monster it battles with the same attribute as the equipped card. Rekindling, which summoned as many 200 defense fire monsters from the grave as possible, banishing them in the end phase, and the most immediately impactful card of the set by far, Fire King Avatar Arvata, who can negate a monster effect once per turn by destroying a fire monster other than itself in hand or on field, floating into a fire, beast, beast warrior, or winged beast in grave on destruction, but that monster is destroyed in the end phase. This one card would instantly bring the previously released Fire Kings into the meta, giving them a solid turn 1 option to dissuade any setting up from the opponent, as any monster effect used could be negated and turned into a Grunix field nuke in an instant. Overall, Rage of Volcano was an interesting set for the developing Zexal Era metagame, giving another deck a powerful push into the meta, complemented perfectly by a balance update the following week. The December 2020 balance update went into effect on December 15, 2020. This balance update is widely considered by many to be one of the most impactful set of changes to multiple decks in the game's history, as this one list would remove multiple staple decks from the meta with its changes. This balance update would only change cards, seeing no skill balance changes at the time. Starting with the ban, Invoked Cositas was banned from play, as the boss monster was still seeing widespread use, dictating that any deck that wanted to play in the meta would have to either play Herald of the Abyss or Artifact Lancia to prevent this monster from completely winning the game on its own. This would be the third ever ban in Duel Links history, marking it as one of the most powerful cards that shouldn't have ever gotten to where it had. The next few hits will be covered by deck to keep clear the overall impact of the changes, as there are a lot. Karakuri Inasichi would be limited, as it was the primary enabler of the various Karakuri OTK combos that had been present in the meta up until now, being able to search for the missing pieces on summon. For Dark Magician decks, Magician of Dark Illusion was semi-limited, and both Magician's Rod and Magician's Navigation were tri-limited, keeping a card in the semi-limit section to dissuade the use of Treacherous Trap Hole, and splitting the most important enablers of Dark Magician's game plan to 3 copies in total, heavily hampering the impact the deck could have going forward. Shiranui Solitaire, Spirit Master, and Sun Saga would all be limited to 2, matching the previous hit to Squire and completely killing Shiranui as it currently existed. The Rising combo variant had clearly been the last straw needed to justify straight up butchering the deck to prevent it from seeing further widespread play, although the core pieces of the deck, Spectral Sword and Solitaire, would still see play together in much less powerful variations of Shiranui, but the meta threat as it once stood was completely gone with these changes. Similarly, Crystron Citri, Scrap Recycler, and Genix Controller would all be semi-limited to match the status of Rion and Impact, completely shutting down the 30-card Crystron deck from seeing any real success in the meta going forward, as now every major enabler of the deck was semi-limited, meaning you couldn't get away with the 30-card builds in their current form. Dragoonity, Senatus, and Divine Lance would swap their positions on the list, with Senatus going to 2 and Divine Lance becoming unlimited as another push to get Dragoonity off of Hey Trunade, as Senatus was a more capable starter than Lance. Last of the major hits, both Invocation and Fusion Reserve were limited to 3 to match the status of Alistair the Invoker, finally limiting the Invoked engine down to 3 total cards in the deck, as now you could only run a maximum of 2 Alistair with 1 Invocation. This hit would practically remove Invoked as a standalone deck, but would still see usage as an engine in other decks like Invoked Neos and Fire Kings as a boss monster generator. Lastly, Assault Armor moved from 2 to 3, and both Hyro Shadow Scout and Dampa Marksman for Hire were released from the list, marking the meta had moved strongly away from the Silent Swordsman OTK, Mill, and for Hires being viable. The set of changes would be felt far and wide across the game, as it firmly removed the most prevalent decks from the DSOD era from the meta, finally allowing decks from the Zexal era to rise and shine. With these changes in effect, most players looked for the next big push to make Exceed decks take over the meta with the next box 2 weeks later. Infinite Ray was the third main box of the Zexal era, released on December 31st, 2020. This box brought multiple archetypes and tools to attempt to finally push Exceed summoning into the spotlight, similar to the New Year's box of the 5Ds era doing the same for Synchro summoning with Karakuri. The first of these archetypes was Tellers, gaining new Exceed tools with Constellar Ptolemy M7 for Constellars and Dark Teller Knight Ptolemaeus for Teller Knights. M7 was one of the first big generic rank 6s, able to detach a material to bounce any monster on field or engrave to hand once per turn. But Ptolemaeus served a different purpose, able to summon Deltaros with only 2 materials, giving Teller Knights far simpler access to their boss monster. While both would be greatly received, neither Teller deck would change their overall meta position with this support, although M7 would see heavy play in any deck that had the ability to summon rank 6s, like Onomat and Thunder Dragons. Hieratic would receive a couple of extremely powerful support pieces here to bring the deck into the Exceed era, such as Tefnuit, who could special summon itself if the opponent controlled a monster and you didn't, Dragon King of Atum, a rank 6 that could detach 1 to summon a dragon from deck, making its attack and defense 0, but making itself unable to attack that turn, Sundragon Overlord of Heliopolis, a rank 8 that could detach a material to tribute any number of monsters on field or hand to destroy that many cards on field, and Seal of Convocation, which could search any Hieratic monster in deck. While these tools were unquestionably powerful, Hieratic lacked a potent win condition that could actually end the game, as Heliopolis did not mix well with the primarily rank 6 focused deck. However, Heliopolis would see play as a generic rank 8 with a powerful board clearing potential, particularly alongside Chaos Dragon Levianeer, who couldn't attack the turn it used its effect anyways, so using it as an Exceed material was no issue. Noble Knights gained new tools to complement their recent structure deck in Pellinor, who could pop a Noble Arms equipped to it and a face-up monster the opponent controlled once per turn, and King Custanin, a rank 4 requiring Noble Knight monsters that could attach any number of materials to bounce that many cards from the opponent's field back to the hand, floating into a Noble Knight's Exceed monster in the extra deck on destruction, attaching itself as material to that monster. Custanin in particular was the last piece of support Noble Knights needed to fully take its position as one of the best decks in the format, using balance to guarantee their powerful openings and consistently win the game rapidly. Star Seraph would also be introduced here, a series of level 4 monsters that enable 3 material rank 4 Exceeds. This included Scepter, who searched a Star Seraph on summon and gave a 3 material Exceed the ability to pop 1 and draw 1 on summon when used as material, Sovereignty, who could special summon itself from hand and draw 1 when a Star Seraph is summoned, able to special summon a Star Seraph if drawn by this effect, but was unable to be used as Exceed material unless it was for a 3 material or greater Exceed monster, Scout, which special summoned a Star Seraph from hand on normal summon, and Scale, which special summoned a Star Seraph from hand on special summon, stacking a light monster from grave on top of the deck when it used this effect, and gave an Exceed using 3 or more materials the ability to draw 1 when a monster is special summoned from the hand if used as material. Scepter and Sovereignty, known as Stick and Chair in the community, were undoubtedly a powerful Exceed summoning engine, as one of each could make a 3 material rank 4, draw 3, and pop 1 thanks to Stick searching a chair while in the same chain link summoning chair and drawing 1, allowing the searched chair to also be special summoned and draw 1, then making a rank 4 with all 3, triggering the other ability of Stick to pop 1 and draw 1. The only issue is that this powerful engine could only be used to its full potential going second, as the only 3 material rank 4s worth making, like Deltaros and Sigma, had effects that were best going into an established board. However, this engine was notably powerful, and if a 3 material rank 4 that's good for going first was ever released in the future, it could become a powerful tool for some decks. Digital Bugs would also be released here, a series of light level 3 insects that focus on switching monsters to defense mode and triggering effects this way while also giving an Exceed made with them powerful effects. While their main deck monsters and the archetype as a whole would not go anywhere in the meta, their Exceed monsters would make waves in later parts of the era with Corbage and Rhinocebus. Corbage is a rank 5 requiring light insects, but could also be summoned by detaching 2 materials from and overlaying onto a rank 3 or 4 insect monster, able to detach 1 to spin any defense mode monster back into the opponent's deck. Rhinocebus is a rank 7 requiring light insects, but similarly can also be summoned by detaching 2 materials from and overlaying onto a rank 5 or 6 insect monster, dealing piercing damage and able to detach a material to destroy an opponent's monster with the highest defense, or multiple if tied. While these two were not immediately impactful, they would soon become known in the meta as some of the stronger Exceed monsters, with future releases bringing them into relevance. Other notable cards from the set include Kage Takage, who could special summon itself from hand when a level 4 monster is summoned, Rescue Rabbit, who could banish itself to summon 2 normal monster level 4 or lowers with the same name from deck, number C39 Utopia Ray, requiring 3 level 4 lights or to be overlaid onto Utopia, allowing you to non-targeting reduce an opponent's attack by 1000 while boosting its own by 500 by detaching a material as long as your life points were at 1000 or lower. Not being once per turn, being a guaranteed OTK on any monster with 3000 or less attack. Number 91, Thunder Spark Dragon, a 3 material rank 4 that can detach 3 to destroy all other face-up monsters on the field. Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger, a rank 7 that could also overlay onto any rank 6 that deals piercing damage, and the selection box reprint of Chaos Dragon Levianeer, giving most of the player base access to the Chaos Strategy boss monster. Overall, Infinite Ray had a lot of powerful options and tools released within its box, but a majority of the most powerful tools it provided would not become meta impactful until new releases brought them up. In the meantime, a follow-up balance update to the December update would go into effect under a week later. The January 2021 balance update went into effect on January 5th, 2021. This update was initially intended to adjust a few skills for the newly changed meta, but an interaction with a recent release also caused this update to place a new card on the limited list too. Starting with skills, Time Passage was now once per turn instead of once per duel, giving Fortune Lady decks a far more reliable skill to use for their strategy. Emergency Call would no longer limit the search of a monster to the same type or attribute and could be used for no life point requirement from turn 5 onward. Ready for Victory can now be used if you had 3 monsters on field instead of just when you had 2. Finally, Ultimate Earthbound Immortal would be nerfed to only be usable from turn 5 onward as a precaution with new burn tools being added. This would have been the end of the changes, but in addition to these, Battle and Boxer Veil would be limited to 3, as its interactions previously mentioned with Alistair the Invoker were unintended and were allowing Invoke to stay in the meta, even with recent massive hits. This set of changes wouldn't be the only major shakeup in the month of January, as the next selection box would end up shaping the meta around it in major ways. Selection Box Volume 4 was the 6th overall selection box, released on January 11th, 2021. This set, like each selection box before it, would bring reprints of major impact cards of the previous year while also bringing in new exclusives. For the exclusives, Gold and Silver Gadget provided great level 4 swarming to make rank 4s, Mythic Water and Tree Dragon provided swarming for rank 8 focus decks, Starleech Paladynamo provided attack dropping for light rank 4 decks, Number 46 Dragluon provided dragon summoning from hand and a counter to the opponent's dragon decks for rank 8 dragon decks, Bujinki Amaterasu provided Banish Monster Recursion, Sylvan Princess Sprite was a rank 1 that could detach 1 to reveal the top card of the deck and add it to the hand if it was a spell or trap, or mill it if it was a monster. Infestation Pandemic provided spell and trap immunity to Evil Swarm and Steel Swarm decks, and Exceed Tribal Rivals provided Exceed Monster Effect Destruction immunity and the ability to destroy anything they battle as long as they have 2 or more materials. However, the remaining 2 exclusives would have major meta implications attached to them in very different ways from each other. The first of these was the Exceed monster Evil Swarm Ouroboros, a generic 3 material rank 4 that could detach a material once per turn to either bounce an opponent's card, make the opponent discard a random card, or banish a card from the opponent's grave, but could only use each of these effects once while on field. The primary effect to focus on here was the discard effect, as this became the first 3 material rank 4 with a good turn 1 effect, which would slowly push Star Seraph as an engine to see play, as now on turn 1 the engine provided 2 draws and a discard from the opponent, or 3 draws if you popped one of your own cards with Scepter's effect. The other exclusive with meta warping impact was unquestionably Book of Moon, a quick play spell that flips a monster into face down defense position. This was undeniably useful as a card with a similar effect, Paleozoic Canadia, had been seeing play on and off since its release, and this one could be used on your turn without having to set it first, allowing single-use monster disruption for no cost. The various uses of this one card, from stopping an attack, disrupting extra deck summons, temporarily cutting off the opponent's disruptions, and many other fringe case uses, including flipping your own monsters face down, would turn this card into the newest staple of the Duel Links metagame, though not all at once, as it would take a few months to fully catch on for how powerful it truly was. Reprints from the set worth noting included Ritual Beast Ultia Pelio, Michael the Arc Lightsworn, Bryonic Dragon of the Ice Barrier, Artifact Lancia, Blackwing Zephyros the Elite, Spiritual Beast Tamer Winda, Deep Sea Diva, Herald of the Abyss, Ballista Squad, Raigeki Break, Needle Sealing, Raiden Hand of the Lightsworn, Spiritual Beast Kanahawk, Atlantean Marksman, Atlantean Heavy Infantry, and Charge of the Light Brigade. Overall, Selection Box Volume 4 was a must-get for competitive players due to the inclusion of Book of Moon, locking the newest staple spell behind the Selection Box timed paywall once again. However, this was not the only new release on the 11th, as the newest structure deck would be released on the same day. Blue Eyes Evolution was the 12th Structure Deck EX, released on the same day as Selection Box Volume 4 on January 11, 2021. This deck was entirely focused on bringing Blue Eyes into the meta in force, but not in the ways initially expected. The 3 exclusive cards to this deck, Twin Burst Dragon, the King of D, and Dragon Revival Rhapsody, did nothing to change the deck's status, as the most impactful of these, Twin Burst Dragon, was already available through the skill Ultimate Dragons. What the deck did do was provide players with easy access to copies of Azure Eye Silver Dragon, the White Stone of Ancients, Dragon Spirit of White, and Cards of Consonance, all super and ultra rares from previous sets that were reprinted in this deck, but all of this was just to make the deck easily accessible. What made the deck viable in the meta was an introduction of the Anniversary Campaign card given to every player for free, Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon, a retrain of the famous monster that could special summon itself from hand by revealing a copy of the original in hand, able to destroy a monster the opponent controlled once per turn at the cost of its attack that turn. This one card would instantly make Blue Eyes worth playing, as it provided monster removal, an easy to summon level 8 body to make synchro plays with on the first turn, providing easy access to Spirit Dragon for the deck, and locking in the skill of choice to be Ultimate Dragons, as now there was no need to run Alternative Evolution over access to Polymerization at will. In addition, the Kaiba level up reward Melody of Awakening Dragon could search for both it and the vanilla Blue Eyes to enable its summon off of a single card. While not the most powerful deck in the meta, it was no doubt the most prolific, as the ease of access and the nostalgia for older fans instantly made the deck one of the most popular on the ladder. Overall, Blue Eyes Evolution combined with the Anniversary event would completely change Blue Eyes' place in the meta, leading into the next Zexal character unlock 2 weeks later. Beginning on January 25th, 2021, Number Hunter would bring the character Kite Tenjo to Duel Links. Kite Tenjo would be almost entirely focused on his strategy of Photon monsters, a series of monsters that all have ways to get their attack to 2000 for usage with his boss monster, Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, a monster that can special summon itself from hand by tributing 2 2000 attack or higher monsters you control. It can banish itself and an opponent's monster when it battles them, returning both to the field at the end of the battle phase, and, if the banished monster was an Exceed, gaining 500 attack for every material detached when this effect was used. While the boss monster was not released with Kite, matching most characters since the start of the 5Ds era having their boss monsters in a box rather than in their unlocks, a couple of cards for the strategy were, such as Photon Advancer, who could special summon itself from hand if you controlled a Photon monster, buffing its attack by 1000 if there's another Photon monster on the field, Starliege Lord Galaxion, a rank 4 that could detach 1 to special summon a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from hand, or detach 2 to special summon 1 from deck, and Photon Stream of Destruction, which banished a card on field if you controlled a Galaxy Eyes monster, able to be used on the opponent's turn if you controlled a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon specifically. All of this was enabled by his skill Galaxy Photon, which allowed the user to send a Galaxy or Photon monster from their hand back into their deck to search for a Galaxy or Photon spell or trap, which would usually result in adding Photon Stream of Destruction, but could also add cards like Galaxy Cyclone through name synergy. The final card worth noting here that wasn't used in Photon strategies was number 20 Giga Brilliant, a rank 3 that could detach 1 to boost all monsters on your field by 300 permanently. This, however, was not why it was used. Instead, being a rank 3 insect monster, it gave any deck with the ability to make rank 3s access to Digital Bug Corbage, able to remove any defense position monster by spinning it back into the opponent's deck, becoming a staple piece of any rank 3 extra deck. Overall, Number Hunter would be a decent introduction to Kite, but wouldn't do much on its own until the next mini-box would support this release 1 week later. Photon of Galaxy was the third mini-box of the Zexal Era, released on January 31st, 2021. This mini-box would be focused on supporting the newly introduced Photon archetype, releasing the boss monster Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon for usage outside of the default skill on Kite. In addition to this, Photon Thrasher had to be special summoned while you controlled no monsters and could not attack if you controlled another monster. Vanisher had to be special summoned when you controlled a Photon or Galaxy monster. Search for a Galaxy-Eyes Photon Dragon when summoned, and gave any Exceed made with it the ability to banish a monster it destroys in battle. And Photon Lizard, who could tribute itself to search for any level 4 or lower Photon monster in deck. While this introductory wave for Photons was solid and would spawn its own deck, Photon was too high roll and disruptible to see meta success, as its standard combo would be entirely stopped by any form of removal on Galaxy-Eyes Photon Dragon, shutting off usage of Photon's Stream of Destruction. The other archetype supported here would be Onomat, receiving Gagaga Head, who could be normal summoned without tributing if your opponent controlled a monster and you didn't, becoming a level 4 this way, revive 2 Gagaga monsters in grave on summon, and let you draw a card when used as an Exceed material. And Dododo Dwarf Go-Go-Go Glove, who could special summon itself from grave if you controlled a Go-Go-Go or Dododo monster other than itself, able to special summon a Zubaba or Gagaga from hand once per turn. These two, particularly in Gagaga Head, alongside some other generic cards from the set, would bring the Rising Onomat deck into the meta, able to reliably make rank 4s with their monster core, and rank 6s through the usage of Gagaga's sister, able to combine her level with another Gagaga monster, usually resulting in a level 6 for both monsters. Dododo Dwarf was used as extension alongside the previously released spell Dododo Draw, and Gagaga Head was used for follow-up on a following turn, able to recycle your pieces used the previous turn. Other noteworthy cards from the set include a series of generic Exceed monsters for various ranks, making this one of the best batches of Exceed monsters so far, such as Ghostrick Alucard for rank 3s, able to detach one to pop a face-down card on field, Abyss Dweller, number 70 Malevolent Sin, Steel Swarm Roach, and Photon Papilloperative for rank 4s, able to shut off grave effects, temporarily remove monsters, negate inherent summons for higher level monsters, and change defense targets to attack respectively, and Photon Strike Bouncer for rank 6s, able to detach one to negate a monster's effect on field and burn for 500 once per turn. Of this set, Dweller, Sin, and Bouncer would be the Exceeds to completely change how Exceed summoning was used in the meta, with Bouncer being used in Onomat, Sin being used in everything that could make rank 4s as a game ender, and Dweller reviving the previous concept for Water Exceed by providing a Water rank 4 Exceed monster that could use its effect on the opponent's turn, allowing the usage of Atlantean monster effects on the opponent's turn for disruption while also being used in multiple other decks for its grave disruption. Overall, Photon of Galaxy changed a lot about Exceed summoning in the meta of the time, which would be punctuated by the KC Cup beginning 4 days later. The second KC Cup of the Zexal Era ran from February 3rd through the 14th of 2021, being a historic KC Cup in that a majority of the mainstays of the DSOD era had now left the top positions of the meta, allowing for decks for the Zexal Era to shine. Decks that had 1 or 2 top spots in the top 100, but not a significant presence overall, included Blackwing, Blue Eyes, Crystal Beast, Dark Magician, Dark Lords, Evil Eye, Goki, Invoked Neos, Megalith, Ritual Beast, Shiranui, Star Seraph, Thunder Dragon, and Yosenju. And 8th overall, with 5 unique players in the top 100, was Fire King. Fire King had finally reached a point of becoming meta-relevant thanks to the release of Fire King Avatar Arvada, giving the deck a reliable turn 1 option as well as disruption and an easy way to destroy Garunix on the opponent's turn for a field nuke coming into your own. The main reason for them still being as low as they were was due to another deck higher in the placements having a direct counter for Fire Kings in their primary strategy. Tied for 5th with 8 unique players in the top 100 were Cyber Dragon, Triamid, and Star Seraph Dark Lords. Cyber Dragon at this point was still doing the same thing they always do: fast games, win a majority, and climb the ladder. Triamids had gone through a couple of shifts at this stage, but at this point were running Balance as a way to ensure opening monster spell and traps in the opening, which would always result in a Triamid and a field spell to begin chains with, and a trap to provide disruption, leading them to be extremely consistent in the face of new decks. Star Seraph Dark Lord was the new deck on the scene and was undeniably the most interesting of the top lists in this KC Cup. The goal of the deck was simply massive resource advantage generation, as the Star Seraph package allowed for quick draw power and hand disruption with Ouroboros. But what made these builds special was the inclusion of Valhalla Hall of the Fallen and the skill See You Later, which returned a monster on your field to your hand once per duel. With Valhalla, you could special summon out a Star Seraph Scepter to search for Sovereignty, triggering your skill to put it back in hand, then summoning it again to search again, triggering the effect of the added Sovereignty 2 to special summon, draw 1, then do the same for the next Sovereignty that you searched, popping Valhalla with Scepter's effect on Exceed Summon to draw again as you no longer needed the spell active, giving you 3 draws on the first turn as well as a hand rip with Ouroboros. In addition, the Dark Lord package of Ixchel, Banishment, Contact, and Sanctified was so powerful in a deck that already had insane resource generation that it boosted the deck to the top tiers for about a month after this tournament ended, as the deck was still extremely new in these days. In 4th place, with 9 unique players in the top 100, was Water Exceed. The addition of Abyss Dweller to the deck had solved every problem the deck had with playing on the opponent's turn up until now, being able to shut off graveyard effects and pop cards with the Atlantean monsters on the opponent's turn thanks to Abyss Dweller's quick effect. In addition to this, the deck had multiple starters, the most notable of which was Deep Sea Diva, whose 1 normal summon would result in a Water Exceed monster with an Atlantean attached. This 1 normal could also turn into 2 with Heavy Infantry, as its effect would allow an additional normal summon that turn, resulting in further field swarming. This was also the primary deck in the tournament benefiting from the usage of Book of Moon, as the deck needed very little to make plays happen, meaning that half of their deck could be dedicated to stable spells and traps to make matches go smoother, such as Book, Forbidden Lance, and Treacherous Trap Hole. Water Exceed, alongside Star Seraph Dark Lords and Thunder Dragons, would be the decks used by the first place finisher in the world, marking them all as potent threats in the newly evolved meta landscape. Tied for second with 12 unique players each were Desperado and Noble Knights. Desperado was in an interesting position as most of the decks in the top 100 were split between one of 2 engines, the Machina engine the deck had used up until this point, and the new Star Seraph engine, providing an overwhelming amount of resource generation off their summons. For all though, Misjudge and Head Judging had become staple pieces of the deck, getting the number of cards needed for Master of Destiny over the top while being extremely powerful disruptions in their own right. Noble Knight was exclusively being played in 30 card builds using Balance, which was almost always catered to 12 monsters, 9 spells, and 9 traps, which guaranteed at least 1 of each in your opening while heavily weighing your 4th card to be a monster, meaning you would always open an equip spell and would usually open away into Madroth, almost guaranteeing the Noble Knight combo would go off on turn 1. In first place, with 15 unique players in the top 100, was Onomat. This deck's game plan was simple, using the skill Onomata Play to open with 2 Onomat monsters to make an Exceed and win the game on the first turn if possible. What made this so consistent was not just the fact that the skill let you pick whichever 2 monsters you wanted to combo with, but also Hatronade being ran at 2 in almost every build. If the deck went second, with Hatronade being able to clear back row, monster removal through offerings in the searchable Gagaga Bolt, and various OTK lines, such as Gagaga Samurai with Mancer, M7 with Sister, and Malevolent Sin with any combination of level 4s. If the deck went first, they had access to Gagaga Sister, which would make rank 6s like Force Focus or Photon Strike Bouncer on the first turn to make it difficult to play around. No matter the position the deck was put into, they would standardly have a monster line they could search with the skill to instantly have a play, making them the most explosively consistent deck of the KC Cup. Overall, this KC Cup would shake the meta of the time to its core, introducing multiple new decks into the running and setting the standard for the power level of the Zexal Era. This meta was also about to get another interesting shakeup with the next character released just 2 weeks later. Beginning on February 25th, 2021, Clearmind would bring Antinomy, the mysterious Turbo Duelist, to Duel Links. With Antinomy would come a series of Tech Genus monsters, or TG for short, a series of low-level monsters that specialize in swarming the board to make massive synchros made of other synchro monsters. The primary method for this was his skill Set Delta XL, which added 5 monsters to his extra deck, being TG Recipro Dragonfly, Wonder Magician, Power Gladiator, Blade Blaster, and his boss monster Halberd Cannon. In addition, it gave you the ability to, if you synchro summoned a TG monster twice that turn, summon out Recipro Dragonfly for free, giving a way to summon Halberd Cannon, a level 12 synchro requiring 3 synchro monsters as material that could negate a summon once per turn, which summoning would be otherwise impractical with the 3-zone restriction of Duel Links. In addition, he would also bring the skill Flight Control, which would let you swap a TG in hand for a TG in deck once per turn and twice per duel, allowing you to handpick your synchro line combos. While the skill was not played initially, it would see experimentation and success over the next couple of months as builds were refined. As for TG monsters brought with his release, Booster Raptor was a level 1 that could special summon itself from hand if you controlled a TG monster, and was able to search a TG monster at the end of the turn if it was destroyed. Striker was a level 2 tuner that could special summon itself from hand if you controlled no monsters with the same destruction effect. Rush Rhino was a level 4 that gained 400 attack while attacking with the same destruction effect. Catapult Dragon was a level 3 that could special summon a level 3 or lower TG tuner from hand once per turn. And Jet Falcon was a level 3 tuner that dealt 250 damage when used as synchro material. Overall, Antinomy's event was undoubtedly full of potential, but the potency of it would have to be complemented by a new main box. Luckily for him, a new main box would release with even more support just 3 days later. Antinomic Theory was the 4th main box of the Zexal Era, released on February 28, 2021. This box's main focus would be on providing the remaining wave of support for TGs, including their boss monster Halberd Cannon to be usable outside of the skill. But what was interesting for this was that Halberd Cannon almost required the base skill from Antinomy to be summoned because of it requiring 3 synchro monsters, which was almost impossible to achieve with such limited zones, meaning that you rarely ever played the one that you would pull from this box. For the remaining TG monsters, there were Screw Serpent, a level 4 tuner that could revive a level 4 or lower TG on summon, Drillfish, a level 1 that could be special summoned from hand if you controlled a TG, able to attack directly and destroy a monster when a TG deals battle damage, Warwolf, a level 3 that could special summon itself from hand when any level 4 or lower is special summoned, including the opponents, and shared the same destruction effect as the previous TGs mentioned, Cyber Magician, a level 1 tuner that could synchro summon using itself on field and a TG in hand, sharing the same destruction effect, and Star Guardian, a level 5 tuner synchro that can add a TG from grave to hand on summon, special summon a TG from hand once per turn, and could be used to synchro summon on the opponent's main phase. From this support, TG would quickly rise into the meta through 2 different builds, a Halberd Cannon Turbo build using Booster Raptor and Screw Serpent to climb into the boss monster on turn 1, locking out the opponent's summons, and a Flight Control build focused on multiple combo lines to control the game state. For the flight control builds, Hatronade was a must, as by clearing out back row and going second, you could easily produce lethal with synchro monsters like Hama the Conquering Bow, Shiranui's Squire Saga, and Onimaru the Divine Wind, in addition to having powerful going first boards and the ability to make monsters like Black Rose Dragon, Vulcan the Divine, and Crystron Quarion Gandrax on the opponent's turn thanks to Star Guardian's effect. For the Halberd Cannon Turbo builds, one of the biggest discoveries for the deck's consistency was Miscellaneous Saurus, which could be discarded from hand, then banished immediately to summon a Booster Raptor from deck, which could then either be used as synchro material to climb into Halberd Cannon, or left to die in the end phase, searching for a Screw Serpent with its effect. This left the Raiden charge engine to fit perfectly in too, as milling to set up Miscellaneous Saurus in the grave was ideal for beginning plays, and hitting a Miscellaneous Saurus and a Screw Serpent off your mills would give you full access to your Halberd line thanks to Star Guardian recurring the milled Screw Serpent. Both builds of TG were considered viable out the gate, but only time would tell if either would be meta relevant. The other archetype introduced here was Rika, a series of plant monsters that focused on tributing themselves to gain advantage on field. This included Snowdrop, which could special summon herself and another plant in hand by tributing a plant on field and copy the level of a plant to all plants on field, Mudan, who could special summon herself from hand by tributing a plant, searching a Rika spell or trap when you did, Erica, who could tribute herself from hand or field to boost a plant by 1000 attack or defense that turn, and could revive herself when a plant is tributed, Primula, who could special summon herself from hand when a plant is tributed, able to boost 2 plant monsters' levels by 2 once per turn, their Exceed monster Kanzashi, who could detach a material when a monster is tributed to revive a monster from either grave as a plant type, able to protect a plant from destruction by tributing a plant from hand or field, their spell card Glamour, which adds a Rika from deck to hand, and could add another plant at the same level by tributing a plant at activation, and the Trap Tranquility, which special summoned a Rika from grave and could special summon another plant by tributing a plant at activation. While this introductory wave was decent for Rika, the deck lacked a win condition potent enough to compete in the changing meta landscape, leaving them behind immediately. Other noteworthy cards from the set include Buzzsaw and Lantern Shark, 2 new 1-card Exceed monsters with Buzzsaw summoning a fish from deck and Lantern summoning a water from hand, giving Water Exceed new quick Exceed options, Bahamut Shark, another powerful water rank 4 that summoned a rank 3 or lower water Exceed by detaching a material once per turn, King of the Feral Imps, a rank 4 that could detach to search a reptile once per turn, Fairy Knight and Gunnar, a 3-material rank 6 that could detach 2 materials to bounce all other cards on the field to the hand, being unrespondable, and easily the most impactful release of the set, Mystical Space Typhoon. Up until this point, if you wanted spell or trap removal in your deck, you were required to use either Cosmic Cyclone, which cost life points, or Galaxy Cyclone, which was not a quick play. Mystical Space Typhoon was usable at no life point cost and was still a quick play, able to remove spells and traps for no cost. While this seems minor, Mystical Space Typhoon would, in later metas, completely replace Cosmic Cyclone outright by being strictly better through multiple minor benefits, such as turning off Treacherous Trap Hole when sniping a trap, although Cosmic would still see play in decks that needed life point cost skills, in metas where you needed to banish your opponent's spells and traps, or in decks that wanted more than 3 pieces of quick play spell and trap removal. Overall, Antinomic Theory was a very powerful box all around between TGs, the new Water Exceed tools, and Mystical Space Typhoon. In addition to this, to help balance out the meta and bolster strategies from this set, a new balance update would go into effect just over a week later. The March 2021 balance update went into effect on March 9th, 2021, being primarily a culling of decks that were not intended to be played in the ways they were currently being used, as well as an attempt to help boost new strategies into the meta from recent sets. Starting with skills, Transcendent Crystals would now be usable at any point as long as you had 7 or more Crystal Beast monsters in the deck, allowing Crystal Beast decks to still use the skill without boosting Crystrons again. Iron Call was now usable by sending a machine in hand back into the deck rather than replacing your draw for turn. Cubic Seeds now allowed for the usage of 6 or less non-cubic spell and traps, allowing the deck to play some staples. Moving into nerfs, what grows in the graveyard now required a 1500 life point cost to put Dark Verger in the grave, which seemed to be specifically targeted at an interaction with Spore, being able to use the Verger to make a 1-card Zenmaity and a level 7 Synchro like Fortune Lady Every, or to make a draw and double pop line involving Coral Dragon and Vermilion Dragon Mech using the skill, although this interaction had seen no meta success up until now. The combo involves summoning Spore, reviving Verger, and then using them to make Goyo Defender, who special summoned a second from the extra deck. You could then banish the Verger to revive Spore, and either go into Zenmaity using the 2 Goyos, summon a level 4 wind up from deck for a Synchro play, or you could Synchro the Spore with a Defender for Coral Dragon, popping a card, then Synchro Coral with the remaining Defender for Vermilion Dragon Mech, drawing one off the Coral Dragon and popping another card with Vermilion. While the combo never saw meta success, it was still such an interesting line discovered that it's worth mentioning. Master of Destiny now skip your first draw when used, negating any benefit you would have had for using the skill alongside Cup of Ace, which was a common interaction the deck saw in its competitive usage. See You Later now had a 1500 life point cost, targeted specifically at Star Seraph Dark Lords, using it to set up powerful resource generation on the first turn. Lastly, Balance, Restart, Spell Specialist, Trap Layer, My Monster cards, and Heavy Starter would all be changed to no longer allow the user to special summon or activate monster effects until the end of their first main phase, targeted specifically at various decks using skills in different ways to guarantee certain openings, such as Noble Knights, dethroning them from their current tier 1 position, although the other main culprit, Triamid, was mostly unaffected by this change. Moving to cards, Bamboo Scrap was limited preemptively to prevent board clogging strategies, similar to other cards in the past, with the introduction of both new plant support and the releasing of other plant support from the list. Misjudge and Head Judging would both be semi-limited, matching the status of Cup of Ace and completely killing the usage of Master of Destiny decks on the latter, as they were usually the last 2 coin flip cards needed to get the count to 7. Amazoness Onslaught was moved from limited to tri-limited, essentially as a waiting room period to completely take it off the list, as Amazoness at this point was power crept out of the meta. Finally, Rose Lover was removed from the ban list, as Sylvan's, the deck that got her semi-limited in the first place, had been since removed from the list and power crept out of the meta. Overall, these changes primarily just removed certain decks from the picture while forcing others to change, leading into another character unlock event 2 weeks later. Beginning on March 25th, 2021, Roll the Dice would bring Duke Devlin, the creator of Dungeon Dice Monsters, to Duel Links. Aside from fan service, Duke really brought no new notable skills or cards with him in his event, leaving it as an overall disappointment, with most characters bringing something of note, being the worst character event since Tristan. This wouldn't be the last change we'd receive in March, however, as the next mini-box was set to shake things up majorly as we approached the World season once more, bringing with it one of the most resilient strategies of the modern era.